We do have a quorum. Seek approval of the agenda. Mr. Young, I believe you mentioned you would like to go to the order item.
I have a 1 minute go to the order and a 2 minute executive session thing that I'd like, Mr. Chairman, if we could, I'd like to reverse, have the go to the order before the executive session.
Actually, is it any action item or just a?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll do executive session last on the agenda then, and that way staff doesn't have to stick around.
I would like to, right, I'd like to have that go to the order thing before the executive session.
Yes, we'll do that. That's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended. Second?
Second.
Mr. Sporana. Motion made by Mr. Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda stands approved. Thank you. Approval of the minutes from our April 27th board meeting. Let's begin at page 2 and run through page 11. Move approval. Motion, Mr. Young, on approval of the minutes. Second, Mr. Miller. Any discussion on the minutes?
I had one question, Mr. Chairman. On page 9, resolution number 20, the vote was 4 in favor, no opposed, and 1 abstention. Sometimes it's appropriate to note who abstained. I don't know whether that request was made or not, but that's sort of immaterial.
I don't know what we normally do. I don't know that we normally note an abstention, but
you can note it. I don't think you need to list who.
I know the person that made the abstention, but it's sometimes when they make an abstention, they request that the abstention be noted. I don't think that was done, but it just begs the issue. Well, whether the minutes are in order.
okay. Do you want anything added, Joe? I mean, you did speak to your abstaining from the vote on the re-election of the officers.
Oh.
Do you want anything mentioned in that regard of the minutes?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or discussions on the minutes? All in favor on approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are carried. The minutes are approved as written. Thank you. Committee reports. Performance Oversight Committee, Mr. Owens.
Great, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We have a few action items today, and several items to report. First we'll deal with is the purchase of scheduling software module. In 2000, we implemented our fixed route scheduling system, acronym HOSTES. HASTES? HASTES, okay. For which was competitively procured and provided by Giro.
Very French Canadian.
You guys need to put like pronunciation things in here. This procurement is for the purchase of an additional module to manage the employee pickup process in an automated way. Staff is satisfied with the vendor, it's incumbent, and has verified that pricing is fair and reasonable. This time we need a motion to award a sole source contract for the scheduling software to Giro Incorporated of Montreal, Quebec, in an amount of $119,300 plus $5,500 in annual maintenance fees.
Resolution 22 on page 21.
Motion by Mr. Young on the sole source contract for scheduling software module. Second, Mr. Sporana. Discussion on the resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion, resolution's carried. Thank you.
Second is purchasing 2 articulated buses. In December of 2014, the board passed a resolution for a 5-year contract purchasing articulated heavy-duty transit vehicles. Staff recommends purchasing vehicles from this contract to replace vehicles in the fleet that have reached their end of useful life. This time we need a motion to issue a notice to proceed to New Flyer of America Incorporated for the purchase of 2 articulated buses in an amount not to exceed $1,593,298.
Resolution 23 on page 25.
Motion by Mr. Young authorizing the purchase of articulated buses under an existing contract. Second? Second. Mr. Miller, seconds. Discussion on the resolution?
Only one thing that we had talked, and everybody's pretty pleased with these buses, and seems like we listened to Carmen, got these buses a while ago, so.
Yeah, who in turn is listening to Lance and Fred. And in turn, this is very consistent with the report that you heard in the planning committee, and you'll hear some comments from Dave on about, you know, a dozen of our routes being above capacity, at or above capacity, and growing.
We had, it should be noted that we had extensive discussion with Fred and other people in the management side that fully analyzed the effectiveness, the effect of our drivers, the training that was needed, and whether or not these buses could go around the appropriate turns that were at one end to the other end of the route. And the other thing I'd just like to note is this should somewhat help to increase our ridership on our BRT route between Schenectady and Albany, because we still, I guess, are leaving some people on the bus stop till the next bus comes. And how many additional seats does it say?
Well, these have a capacity for up to 100 people, including standees.
Versus our other
50, 60.
50. So there should no longer be a reason for people standing on the bus stop waiting for the next bus.
Don't go that far. That's how high ridership is.
Certain routes.
It'll help.
It'll help.
Any other discussion? Thank you for that.
I hope it helps the difference between the cost of the two buses.
8% federal funds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Because they're federal funds doesn't mean we should.
I think you know what it means.
Resolution is carried. Thank you.
Next one deals with CDTA accepting state share for 2 federal grants. New York provides a 10% match to the authority's federal grants. State requires a board resolution to access these funds, and it will allow the organization to accept the state portion of formula allocation funds. This year, federal and state funds are being utilized to purchase 12 40-foot vehicles and perform the engineering and design of the new BOT lanes. At this time, we need a motion to accept these funds for a total amount of $278,646.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Miller,
Second.
second Mr. Young on resolution number 24 of 2016. Paraphrasing regarding receipt of funds from New York State. Any discussion?
10% match.
10% match. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is carried. Thank you.
Great. So the last one, and one that took a fair amount of time, not too much, was our independent auditor reported out for their audit for the previous fiscal year. And I would encourage all the board members that hadn't had a chance to look at the PowerPoint presentation in our package this month. The lead auditor, Donna Gonzer, and Krista Lindsay from Lumsden and McCormick, our independent external auditors, presented the draft 2016 year-end audit to the committee, and the net result was what's called an unqualified, vernacular is a clean opinion to the authority. Topics of the presentation included the process, various audit reports, change in accounting principles, GASB 68, which sort of takes GASB 45 and then adds in the items other than healthcare that are post-retirement, largely pension, some observations and recommendations, and the balance sheet. And I do want to mention that, in my discussions with the auditors, both before and then after, they commented very favorably on finance staff and how we had a large, significant turnover with a couple folks there, and that they really felt that the finance department had handled that well, and the audit results certainly show that. So at this time, before the board is a need to approve the audit, accept and approve the audit. Fiscal year 2016 financial compliance report prepared by Lumsden and McCormick LLP dated March 31, 2016.
Resolution 21 on page 20.
Motion for approval of the draft financial and compliance report for fiscal year 2016 made by Mr. Young. Second.
Second.
Mr. Miller. Discussion on the resolution or the audit report?
I think on the report, Mr. Chairman, I certainly echo what Tom said about the manner in which the audit was conducted. These people have been now doing these audits with us for several years, and if anything, they seem to improve the time spent and the questions asked and their ability to help us continue to do an outstanding job as far as our numbers are concerned. And I think I speak for everybody, both on the board and management, in offering them our thanks and congratulations of doing another exceptionally good one.
I agree, and I too, like Tom, had a conversation with Donna and echo her comments about the professionalism of our staff and the state of the records that she is auditing for us and the cooperation that she gets. It's a credit to the organization, and the audit is a requirement, but if we can use it as a tool to help us, that makes it that much more valuable than just something that we have to procure every year as a required service. So
we probably also ought to mention her evaluation of GASB 68, because we did have an extensive discussion about that. And a lot of people, I don't think, including myself, who I thought understood it, have a better understanding it after her review. And unlike GASB 45, which we have nothing that we can do about it except add the number to our unfunded liability each year, with GASB 68, the number seems to depend on a guesstimate made by the controller's office that affects what the premium will be that's charged to municipalities for those non-union workers in our case. And if they guess right, the premium will be increased as to those workers. If they guess wrong, our unfunded liability will be added to our balance sheet. In this year, it was $750,000, I think, some number very close to that. In future years, as Don at least explained to me, I had an extensive conversation with her the night before she made the report to the board. She particularly noted to me that number could vary anywhere from the number that was created this year, and it could be as much as a couple of $1 million, depending on completely what somebody guessed. Because unfortunately, the number that the controller is evaluating from is the previous year-end balances, which, yes, I don't know why they couldn't use present year. It would seem like that would be a little more accurate.
I think the challenge with using the present year is simply that, and we run into this with our own, with union, CTA, union pension plan. It takes the actuaries some time before they can calculate the numbers. We just got our actuarial report at our May meeting for December 31 of 2015 evaluation. So they didn't want the provision to hold up the issuance of financial statements by requiring that it be, a more current valuation from the pension plans. And I think even with our OPEB liability, that we do that every 2 years. Do we do the actuarial evaluation every 2 years?
We do a full valuation
Every 2 years, okay. And then it's just updated
It's updated.
in between. So I think that's the reason, is that they wanted to have current data, but unless something happens like in 2008 where the market just goes in, you know, in the tank, from year to year, as long as investment returns are somewhat level, there shouldn't be huge swings in that liability that we're gonna have to report on our balance sheet. In a year like 2008, where the plan was much more unfunded than it is now, it would have been a much bigger liability to report in the subsequent year. So it really depends how much we report. And again, the difference between the OPEB and this is that the pension plan is funded. So really what we're picking up is a piece of the underfunding of the New York State retirement system as a whole. Whereas with the OPEB liability, none of it's funded, so it's just a pure liability that goes on our balance sheet.
So the better the controller's office does with the pension fund, the less likely there is either the premium being increased or the deficiency being added. Or
And again, in my conversation with Donna, she mentioned a completely different scenario with the teacher's retirement system, where it right now is overfunded. So the participating employer school districts in that retirement plan actually have an asset on their balance sheet, because along the way they've contributed more than what needed to be contributed in order to pay the known liabilities that exist in the plan, because the assets are more than what the liabilities are.
But then that has to be put on the balance sheet as an asset, not as a reduction of the liability.
There isn't a liability in an overfunded plan. There isn't a liability,
That's true.
because the assets are more than the present value of the future payments. And our combined plan at one point was in the same situation, and then investment returns didn't hold up with what we were basing our projections on, and we became an underfunded plan. So
I'm mistaken, but I thought it was like a pool, but we don't share pluses and minuses. Like the teachers union wouldn't send us.
We didn't used to, but because of this change in the accounting pronouncement, we used to just put plan details, not even relative to CDTA, but we would put plan details of the New York State retirement system in our footnotes to our financial statements. And that was all we had to do, was disclose that we were a member of the plan, and we reported on what the plan's numbers were, not our relative percentage of that. I don't know how New York State has determined what percentage is being assigned to us for the liability. But they're basically telling us at this point that the plan is underfunded by X millions of billions of dollars, whatever the number is, and that we're responsible for a portion of that underfunding. And that's what goes on our balance sheet.
So
They're not asking us to write a check for it. It's just something that if the plan were to shut down today, there would be a contribution we'd have to make in order to make the plan assets equal the plan liabilities.
But the overfunded entities would keep that money, and they wouldn't have to share it.
If it was in the case of teachers' retirement, the participating employers who have contributed to that whole plan, the big plan, they would end up getting some money back. Again, I don't know the formula that would be used to determine that, but they would end up getting money back, where we're in the position where if things were to close down with the retirement system, we'd have to write a check. So for us, it's a liability. For school districts, at least right now, it's an asset for them.
Then why, Dave, does it become an addition to our unfunded liability instead of just an increase in the premium?
Because we're not being billed for that underfunding on a current basis.
Okay.
It's a share of the liability, but that liability, again, it's gonna change. We do get billed every year for a premium, or a contribution, not a premium.
Yeah.
So we get a bill from them based on who's in the system, what the payrolls are for the employees who are participating, what their ages are, what their number of years of service is. And that bill changes every year. Some years in the past that when the plan doesn't perform, we get a much higher bill to pay. When the plan does perform, we get lower bills to pay on an annual basis.
So that bill is divided up between all of the public,
Every employer that participates in the state retirement system gets a bill.
the
Towns,
school districts.
Employee and contributions are different based on start dates of employees, based on tier. You know, it's not an insurmountable, complicated, overcomplicated formula, but there's a lot of moving parts.
How many entities would that be? How many thousands?
yeah.
Easy to see why we added $750,000.
Well, and again, not that it's insignificant, but I was happy when Donna told me that it was that number. I was fearing something much greater, so.
We anticipated like $4 or $5 million. Mike and I had talked about that extensively. The other thing Donna noted for me, and I won't mention the public entity, but somebody who has one public entity that has a lot of cash on their balance sheet figured out a neat way to create a different kind of business atmosphere for themselves. They, even though New York State does not have any way that we can fund this particular public entity decided to set up an irrevocable trust on their own and put the excess cash that they had in that pot, and then proceeded to be able to apply for additional funds because they didn't have any cash.
Correct.
I won't mention the organization.
I know who it is. But you're right, that seems a little disingenuous, but
As you know.
it fixed their OPEB problem.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I do think that it's appropriate some of this discussion be in our minutes.
Okay.
We did identify the issue, and management has recognized it, and I think are making the right moves to work with it.
Okay. All in favor of approval of the financial statement and compliance report?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved, thank you.
Okay. We also received a report from our internal auditor. Sarah gave us a monthly audit report, work in progress, including review of the Rensselaer Railroad Station parking contract and dependent benefits of it. We met as an investment committee. We discussed the investment portfolio, which is provided to everybody each month. The next committee meeting is in June. Under the administrative discussion items, we received the 8th annual workplace safety report. As I just said, this was our 8th full year of having a comprehensive program to place workplace safety. Rick provided us a summary accident, injury, workers' comp claim trends overview. And we had, some really good news number-wise. We started this in January of 2008, this program, and for fiscal years 09 through 16, we averaged 76 injuries per year, including 19 severe injuries. And CETA's experienced both a significant decrease in both the injuries and severe injury cases since the program, and we've continued this trend. In this most recent year, we achieved a milestone of having the lowest number of total employees injuries ever reported, 57. So significant benefit that the program has provided, and especially to our workforce. It means a lot. Really shows the employer's emphasis and backing of making sure that we deliver a safe workplace to our employees. We received the worker risk management, workers' compensation quarterly report. Our procedures require a quarterly review of the adequacy of the risk management self-insurance account and the workers' comp self-insurance account. The committee determined the accounts are adequate at this time. Amanda can provide any additional details. Monthly financial report was received from Michael. Mortgage tax receipts were under budget projections by about 16%. Wages were slightly under budget. Claim payments and liability claims were under budget this month as well. General insurance was under budget due to a refund on our auto physical damage policy, and we're in a satisfactory cash flow position at this time. On the non-financial performance report, we made some adjustments to the data that's being collected, which resulted in some changes to the report. Basically, we are including some different average trend lines in addition to some new categories, scheduled versus unscheduled work, and an adjustment in how we present ridership. Overall measurements for the month were very positive. Ridership was down about 2.5%, primarily due to fewer weekdays this year as compared to the same month last year. When you compensated for that, it was about the same number. 0 preventive maintenance, PMIs not on time, and missed trips were at 33 this month. The mean distance between service interruption was slightly over 25,000 miles. Scheduled work was at 61%, and the staff is going to look a little bit into measuring this as in a time format as opposed to just items that were, as opposed to number of work orders. And the staff are going to look into that and get back to the board on that, or get back to the committee. 15 preventable and 26 non-preventable accidents. 91% of customer complaints were closed within 10 days. That was it, Mr. Chairman. Subject to any questions or further discussion, that completes performance oversight.
Questions for Mr. Owens?
Can I just say one thing? I think it's really gratifying that a message that Mark, Rick have brought, Lance on the floor also, have brought to the people, our people, that we really do not want you to be injured. It's not dollar cents, it's you as a person. And, you know, when you feel that as a worker, I think it's, you know, it takes 2 more minutes to go get that piece of equipment. That's good, that's what people want. We don't want you physically hurt. And I think the message is a very important one.
I think you're right, you know, on the safety reports that we continue to get, I still remember the difference between our workman's compensation claims when we got rid of the manual lifts out of the, for the wheelchairs out of the buses and made it automatic. We didn't have any more bus driver back injuries from that source at least. And those are typical things that safety people brought to everybody's attention in the organization. I think it's our safety people have done an excellent job.
Yeah, I encourage you to take a walk into the garage and work areas if you get a minute. You can either do it before or after a meeting, or give Lance a ring and walk down there. You know, for an old grizzled vet like me, I mean, I had a conversation today with Lance and Corey in the middle of the work floor that 20 years ago would have been very difficult to have. It was dark, it was loud, it was not really pleasant, but we had a 5 or 10 minute conversation. We good-naturedly ribbed each other a bit in the middle of a lot of activity. You know, buses were coming in and out. Guys and gals were working on buses, changing oil, dropping engines in 15 feet away from us. But it's just, you know, it's a mindset change. And you've got to have everyone buying in. I mean, Rick buys in, but Lance doesn't. Lance buys in, but Corey and the union don't. Nothing gets accomplished. So it's a real team effort. But it's just amazing. I was thinking about that. We had a conversation that you couldn't have had. You couldn't have had it 20 years. You couldn't see each other 20 years ago.
Well, I echo what Karen said about board member visiting the garage, because I was down there a few months back and I just couldn't believe the difference between what was after Lance took over and what it was with his previous boss. You could actually have a picnic down there now, I think, and not be concerned, where before you wouldn't even find a place to sit, let alone stand. I mean,
Choking on the water over here.
Yeah. Went down the wrong way.
Thank you.
you've done a great job, Lance.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Governance Committee report. The Governance Committee met on May 19th here at 110 Watervliet Ave. We went into a discussion, executive session discussion on a personnel matter. There was no action taken in executive session. We had a little bit of a discussion. Mr. Young expressed concern about GASB 68. We had a discussion about GASB 68 and the pension liability, and ongoing concern about the OPEB liability or the GASB 45 liability. And again, a recognition that in 2 years, that full liability is going to hit our balance sheet, where right now it's only a portion of that liability. GASB changed its schedule. It was allowing us to pick up some of that liability year by year over a scheduled timeline, and with the new GASB, it will all have to go on the balance sheet at that point in time. So that's going to be a big hit.
What's the
Not
number?
a hit in a good way.
It's around $30 million, I think.
Additional.
Total liability will be around 75 million.
Right now, it's 41 million. But this doesn't happen, does it happen next year or the year?
The 3/31/19 financial statements.
Next meeting of the Governance Committee will be June 23rd at 11:30 a.m. Questions for me? Thank you. Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee report, Mr. Miller.
We met on Thursday, May 19th at 12:30. Ross Farrell presented the 215-216 route performance report. This is our annual performance report for fixed route services. The report includes information on our route network, ridership, and productivity, a description of major service changes and recommendations for the coming year, and there was quite a bit of discussion and information provided by Ross, which gave us an excellent background on how the major routes, the changes are made, which the issue is when you have a low performance route, unfortunately, people are very, very unhappy when they lose it, and we understand that, but it's a cost initiative, and all the changes they have made have increased tremendously. So the staff has always, in my opinion, always done a good job managing and looking for ways to improve. We set a new ridership record of 17.1 million boardings, and although the ridership has slowed this year as compared to prior years, it is the 5th year in a row that we have grown ridership. The Saratoga route restructuring planned and developed in the fiscal year 2016 will be rolled out shortly. The plan allows for more service to corridors with the highest demand, while providing new connections to destinations that previously did not have service. That was kind of what I was talking about earlier. And we're looking forward. We will begin construction this year on the Uncle Sam Transit Center and the Lark Street intersection project ahead of the 2 new anticipated BRT lines. And we will meet on June 23rd at noon.
Question mark. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Miller?
Norm, is there an agreement with the owner of the parking garage in Troy?
Not yet, I'm working on it. Really good, well, what you call it, we have sort of an agreement in principle. We had it on the final assignment.
Carmen, do we have any projected numbers as to what the increase or status quo might be of ridership next year?
We put a
General or share?
as a result of the transit center, haven't we? We know how many people will use it.
Yeah, I mean, there are river corridor BRT ridership projections, but not specifically the Uncle Sam Transit Center.
The transit center is a place rather than a route, so we can tell you how many people will use
Correct.
the center. I'm not sure we can
It's a
translate
stop.
that into riders.
I guess experience will tell us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Norm.
Dave, I have one more question. What's the status of the grants that we need to do the river corridor and the Western Avenue corridor?
No change, right? We're still in the new starts. We have received some money from the sidewalk and the,
Transportation Alternatives Program. So that was a chunk of money. There was the $650,000 from last year, the statewide competition that we discussed. We are still on track to submit the package that Carmen was talking about in August or September of this year. So that's when we put the stamp on it, get it in, get it reviewed, and it's officially, and we wait for the answer at that point. So we're on schedule to get that submitted. And that's the big chunk.
In those grant applications, have we also requested or anticipated the money needed to increase the staff that will be required to do?
There are some components in there that accommodate for an increase in resources.
but most, I know where you're going this year, most of this is money to build things, money
Correct.
to install things, not money to operate. The operating issue continues to be the struggle.
Technicians and operators aren't covered.
No, that's why I asked the question, because we talked about this before, but the issue is we get these two new corridors built, and we then have to conjure up some method of being able to pay for the additional drivers and the additional equipment that costs the goods. I know we estimated what the equipment needed will be, but I think at some point in time, we ought to have down in black and white someplace what the additional cost of,
We have that.
we do that.
Oh, yeah, we know that.
Well, maybe later, after we do the submission for the capital piece, maybe then, because we're rolling out some service, which, we talked about in the committee meeting last week. Service that we're gonna roll out now will actually reduce what was the previous gap in operating costs for the BRT line.
Yes.
So we're incrementally cutting into what the earlier numbers were, the earlier projections were by the service that we've added on the street already. While it's not necessarily BRT service that we've added, it's service that will close the gap when we do roll out the BRT service, because those hours will already be on the street.
It'll be part of that.
Correct.
We can get you
So-
an update.
Maybe later in the summer, early fall.
Yeah,
Just-
no problem.
Because we had early numbers when we reviewed the whole project. There was an operating component that was presented to us at the same time the capital piece was laid out. And I think that was when we did selected the best alternative, maybe?
That's right.
So,
Very good.
Did we have projections of the increased ridership at
We
that
have
time?
that too.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll bring that all back.
It'd be nice to,
It's changed a bit too.
it'd be nice to have an update, I think.
Operating costs actually has come down, ridership projections have gone up.
We can show you exactly what's getting submitted in terms of what we're telling the federal government.
We still have that potential issue of whether or not some of this funding could come from the federal highway department.
Yeah, I'm not sure I hold out as much optimism as you.
Well, I told you one way that we might be able to
We're trying,
get some funds, but
we're working on it.
has to have a whole package. We can't be almost or part way, or we think. We gotta really know if we're gonna go that way. It still is a potential.
okay. Thank you. Chief Executive Officer's report,
Yep.
Mr. Basil.
Mr. Sacro, my report is in your packets. I'll hit a couple of the, either the things that weren't mentioned already or things that deserve to be highlighted. Some good news, as of this past week, bus operator headcounts are spot on. We're exactly on budget. It took us a while to get there. And I'm also happy to tell you that our maintenance headcounts are pretty close to spot on. That took us even longer to get here. As you know, it's a tough environment right now to recruit in. But hats off to our Human Resources Department and our ops people for working together to get that done. It's very timely because we will now enter the summer pick of services and runs, and that is full of our maximum vacation allowances. So we need to be at budgeted headcount to cover our work without major manipulation, which unfortunately Fred's people and Lance's people have become used to. But we want them to enjoy a more sort of subdued and understandable work environment. But it took us a while to get there, and now we have to work to keep it there and keep attrition levels to a reasonable place. A couple of weeks ago, Art and Joe joined me. We organized a recognition effort for our partners in law enforcement and first responders. We traveled to the Albany Police Headquarters, Troy Police Headquarters, Fire Headquarters, Schenectady, Scotia, and just dropped off a tray of cookies and said thank you. I think we sometimes take for granted the daily or sometimes even hourly interactions that we have with law enforcement, they have with us, and with first responders. Probably not a day or two goes by without an issue on a bus. Somebody falls, someone sprains an ankle, someone thinks they're having heart failure, you name it, we have it. So there's a constant cooperation, partnership with law enforcement, and we wanted to make sure we didn't take it for granted, and we went out and said thank you, and I can tell you that I've gotten a good deal of feedback. It was small, but very much appreciated. So thanks to Joe and Art.
I think they appreciated our intent and the fact that we took enough time to give them a little recognition, which I hate to say it, but I think our police departments are so many times not given any credit whatsoever for the amount of protection and service that they really provide to the community. The only time you get anything in the paper is something negative where somebody did something wrong. And in the organization, there's going to be people that sometimes do things that are improper, incorrect. But so many of our safety people perform 99% of the time in such an excellent way of protecting our communities that it should be recognized more often.
And it was fun to see Jamie, you do this, you do that, here, you take this.
She's pretty good at it.
And just
They may recruit you, Jamie.
I think my husband would gladly give me up, so that would be great.
Just to put a further exclamation point on the public safety issue, as we've talked about before, Rick, where's Rick? Rick was here. Rick is coordinating the risk management seminar to be located in Albany in June, and the session at lunch one day will be led by Sheriff Craig Apple, and the topic will be law enforcement and transit agencies, the importance of a strong relationship. So it works both ways. I mean, we're obviously congratulating law enforcement and what they do, but it's we work together, and that's what builds a strong relationship.
Well, that's even more evident when Rick gives us those reports about the seminars that they have with all of the local and regional law enforcement people as far as safety for the public in general, not just safety within our buses. A number of organizations that are safety oriented, and it includes the FBI, Homeland Security, and the Sheriff's Office, the state police, the local sheriffs, local police departments. It's quite a massive number of security people when they have these sessions. I know last time we had one of those safety demonstrations at the railroad station, where we just put on a demonstration of what would happen if you had a problem. There were like 14 different agencies that were there that were involved in the exercise, which actually transported people to where they should go. If there was a danger to the people in the station, increase the pronouncements of things that should be done and how they should be done. And the exercise was, the last one was noted by the Department of Defense actually as being a very significant exercise that had been put into play in Albany.
Sorry. That's okay.
Just adding emphasis.
Well, yeah. Okay. Listen, as long as I have Mr. Young, this report's pretty easy. Norm mentioned Saratoga. Service starts Sunday the 29th. Tomorrow, late morning, we'll have a press event up at City Hall. Dave Stackler will lead it. Georgie Lucia will be there. Georgie has been very, very involved in the public outreach and really has sort of been our connection to the community, and really has done a yeoman's effort, woman's effort here on this. And you may or may not know, Georgie and her kids, ride our buses regularly. I got a text the other night. She was on the Route 50 going to an event at Proctor's with the kids. So, it's from the heart, but she walks the talk too. But the public outreach on this has been phenomenal, and Georgie's really led the way. But hats off to Ross. I don't see Ross. Chad Hyde, who you may or may not remember. Chad's our scheduler. John Scherzer, Chris, and a bunch of other people. But really John, Ross, and Chad have led the way. Chris and I kind of chime in here and there, but I've lost track of the number of meetings that these guys have gone to. Well into the dozens. Listening to people changing the plan, listening to people modifying the plan, listening to an elected official taking a left, not a right. The other day, taking a bus stop sign down because the business owner wasn't all that happy with the sign being in front of their building. Oodles and oodles of that stuff. So it's finally coming to fruition. At the end of the day, what sometimes gets lost, and we're going to add 10,000 hours worth of service in addition to the reconfiguration. So hats off to the guys and gals here at CDTA for, I think, a job well done. A couple of events to highlight. A couple of NIFTA events you'll see. We hosted the board of directors meeting here in mid-May, talking about, no surprise, state money. Series of conference calls where we get together and talk about no surprise, state money. We're meeting down at the governor's office later this afternoon to talk about no surprise, state money. So there's a focus on it. I think we've been very successful in the last several years. There is more state operating assistance than 3 years ago. There is more dedicated, underline, state capital money. And I think it's going to help us to do some of the things that we want to do and we need to do to make our service better. I talked about the work, the headcount. It will be helped by a class of 16 new bus operators that's in training right now. I spoke with them last week. Welcome to CDTA. They'll be ready for service second week in June. So if there's any drop off with attrition, I think the 16, which is one of our largest classes in a while, I think that'll take the edge off of anything that happens between now and then. So all good news in that regard. Hey, hats off to Mike Collins and his gang. He organized the CDTA team at the Workforce Challenge. He and some of the young studs led the way with the under 30-minute, 3.5 mile, and then some of the people in the low 30s, and then the old guys like me kind of just chugging along, looking at the scenery, counting the trees, and et cetera. But it was a great event. It's great to have the CDTA.
Did you have a bus pick you up, huh?
We had a bus take us there. Mike even organized for soft drinks to be consumed after the race, where a woman my age asked me, or said to me, it's kind of odd that you would run a road race and then drink a beer. And I looked at her and said, if it wasn't for the beer, I wouldn't run the road race. So,
It's the carrot.
yeah, it was a carrot, but, great job. There's a lot of these things that happen here at CDTA, and different people step up to the plate and get these things done. But it's the accumulation of all these little things that make CDTA a great place to work. Just this week, we met as a labor management committee. That is a group that meets about every 2 or 3 months. It's representatives from the ATU and management, where we can sort of take a break from the issues of the day and sort of talk about the direction we're going, things that are working, and frankly things that aren't working, things that we want to focus on, things that we disagree on. But it's a pretty good natured hour and a half, 2 hours or so. Corey wants them to be 2 hours. I want them to be an hour. But where you can kind of just take a step away from the workday and try to sort of reset your priorities. So all good news. Ridership continues to go up. Our financial situation, as Tom reported, is good, is healthy. I too spoke with Donna. Donna Gonzo. She's pleased. I'm pleased with the partnership, which is what it really is. It feels like a partnership. It feels like they're members of our team. And that's not always been the case, and some of our board members with tenure can remember where the relationship really wasn't all that great, and it just sometimes was more hurtful than helpful. I'm pleased to say that that's not where we are. We have a relationship that's healthy. So that concludes
I'm pleased as well.
my positive report.
We saw the other side.
It's not pretty.
Thank you, Carm. Any questions for Carm? All right, Mr. Young, go to the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is sort of a question for management and maybe a little bit of information, but this was published in our local paper 2 days back, and it talks about buses basically in New York City. But I wonder how this might pertain to us.
They're blue.
Well, the issue was that where we had WIFI in the buses, that there was a lack of pedestrian safety in the buses. Now, they didn't make any suggestions as to how this could be improved, but the issue seemed to be the lack of technology to, quote, address perhaps the worst safety issues with big vehicles hitting pedestrians while making turns. And my question, first of all, to you is, or to you, Amanda, is do we have an issue with drive often?
Certainly not to the extent that they have in Manhattan. Just really the issue that they're describing there, you've seen it, you've been there. The level of pedestrian activity in Manhattan is 50 times the level of activity at our highest point in Albany, Schenectady, or Troy. People are crossing streets, buses are making let's just use right turns, and people either walk into buses or.
Well,
That's the issue
that's really the issue.
Now they're
The
talking
last
about.
time I was in New York City, it's unbelievable that the pedestrians think that the roads are sidewalks.
That's the issue, and I guess this is critics of the MTA's addition of the Wi-Fi is that they got their heads down now and they're not paying attention. I don't know if the Wi-Fi causes the head to be down or the mobile device causes the head to be down. It's chicken or the egg. I think it's much ado about nothing, and I don't think it's
What
much
possible
of an
type
issue.
of technology could you put on a bus to avoid that kind of.
Like collision
there is
avoidance,
technology.
There's
turn
technology.
avoidance.
Beeping.
exists.
It exists.
And not everybody likes it either,
Yeah.
because it makes a whole lot of noise. Not saying that, you know, safety isn't of paramount importance, but it's not a slam dunk, because it makes a whole lot of noise.
So follow what Chris is saying, a bus approaches the intersection, it's about to take a right, driver puts his blinker on or her blinker on, beep, 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 very loud, until the right turn is complete.
Now, what do you want to do? Blow a horn like the steamboats road or something like that?
I don't think it's an issue.
And would they pay any attention to it anyway?
I reiterate, I don't think it's an issue.
I mean, it's like a mad scene when you see those crossings in the city.
I see it downtown Schenectady all the time, and the best one is after I make deposits at the bank, I come around Broadway out to State Street, and generally it's noontime. The light turns green to cross State Street. I can't believe the number of people, pedestrians,
Walking
with
their
it. You know, I blow my horn just out of spite. If you're,
That's not nice.
well, I mean, if they're walking against the light,
You're blowing your horn to alert them to the fact that you're coming through the
that's
intersection.
exactly right. But the point is, if a driver, whether it's a bus driver or any driver, is actually watching what's going on, it's not really an issue.
So we have enough complaints about the beeping noise that is on when our kneeler goes down. I don't think we need more beeping noises to take away.
Have we had any of those kind of accidents?
Nothing that would have been prevented by anything like that.
We've had a few walks into buses.
Yeah, it's it's usually.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Where Arctic saying bus is turning, right?
So I know.
That wasn't a bus turning though, it was actually a pedestrian who got off one bus and was trying to run across the street and got hit by another bus.
He just didn't look.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I read that same article, Mr. Young. I like that they're using the same color blue that we are. Though their decals are a little different, but their blue is our blue, so good for them to follow suit. Just a Dave's Fireside Chat, I guess, sort of to follow up on last month's positive comments, since we're having a lot of positive things happening at CDTA. Our focus is always on our customers. Keeping customers satisfied, encouraging them to use our services more often, and making the system more attractive to new customers is one of our main goals. Our success has happened with a thoughtful and planned strategy. Our board of directors, past and present, works closely with staff to develop a planning process that translates into success and is meaningful to the people who work at CDTA. More than a decade ago, we embarked on a journey to improve our service network, to closely monitor its performance, and to design services that people could easily understand and use. Our planning process considers where service is currently deployed, how service is designed, how it's monitored, and how it is modified or improved. We started with the adoption of a regional transit development plan. The TDP was our first comprehensive planning document of its kind here at CDTA. It provided a laser-like focus on service design and development. The TDP gave us the tools to evaluate, monitor, and promote our services. It remains one of our most important strategic planning tools. The TDP established service categories and expectations within those categories. It provided us with a report card and a measuring stick for our services. If the service is a trunk route, we defined what the standards were in terms of frequency and span, and what the expectations are of the route in terms of ridership and productivity measures, like riders per hour or riders per mile of operation. Some of you may remember that we first applied the TDP changes to our routes in a geographic manner, updating them community by community in our 4 county service areas. We gave customers, business partners, and community leaders the opportunity to tell us where service was most needed. From there, we redesigned the network from the ground up. We also discovered a public outreach formula that was acceptable to people and that worked for us. Over time, this outreach process became a calling card for us and we use it to review our services, to consider fare changes, and even to evaluate construction projects and other initiatives. Over time, the TDP has produced a mindset shift at CDTA. Rather than react to circumstances caused by external factors like price of fuel, job shifts, or population changes, we are very proactive, reviewing services annually and making changes to our route network before external changes occur. This allows us to be in lockstep with the development objectives in our communities. Where public transportation goes, community grows. We have strengthened trunk routes and developed connector routes to support our core network. This has resulted in most of our trunk routes performing above performance expectations and has developed some neighborhood routes into potential trunk routes. The TDP and our systematic approach to planning has opened the doors to conversations with developers about transit service before development occurs. Our proactive approach has fostered a respect level with developers and business owners that produces results. It has led to a stronger route network, and it spurred the growth of our universal access program. The mindset change that I spoke of earlier is also evident in how we approach new business opportunities. With a strong route network that produces results, we have developed an innovation platform of projects that includes transit centers, smart card payment, real-time information delivery, and a targeted approach to vehicle comfort and appearance. Our work is clearly paying dividends. People are using our service. This past year, total ridership, as Norm mentioned, was 17.1 million, breaking our all-time record for the third consecutive year, and up, I believe, about 25% over the last 5 years. Ridership is up across all service classifications. Service along Washington Avenue, Western Avenue, Route 5 between Albany and Schenectady, Route 32 between Albany and Troy, often operate with more than 45 customers per hour. And some neighborhood routes are nearing that level of performance, as we mentioned, that are close to trunk route levels. Our staff is working on a service improvement package that will increase frequency and spans on several of these corridors. That will begin this fall, and we included the expense in our recently adopted budget and spending plan. And that's what I mentioned Mr. Young would cut into the gap on the BRT service additions that we would need to make. All of this work is consistent with the board vision for a bigger and better CDTA. Getting there requires time, effort, and commitment. These things don't happen by accident. They require a strategic approach to building the CDTA organization and an expanded menu of services. Thank you to my fellow board members for their commitment to this work, and thank you to our staff and our 650 employees who are executing the game plan expertly and with impressive results. CDTA is a great organization that is connecting people to economic opportunities throughout the capital region. More and better things are right around the corner. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have an executive session to go into. There will be no action taken in the executive session, so staff doesn't have to hang around. I will ask Carm to stay.
Senior staff to stay.
Senior staff to stay. Okay. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? So moved. Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're good.